Prof. My name is Sadia Kasimi, and I'm a scholar with a deep interest in Greek and Indian ancient civilizations, particularly the intersections between Greek and Indian music culture, including musical instruments, music, and dance. I completed my bachelor's studies in Greek culture, followed by a master's in museum studies, in the context of which I documented Konstantinos Kalaitzis' great collection of 200 Indian classical, folk, and tribal musical instruments. I am currently a PhD candidate at the Demokritos University of Thrace in the Department of History and Ethnology. My research focuses on the soft power of Indian music culture in Greece. It is an incredible privilege to be here today and share my thoughts with all of you. As many of you may already know, Professor Bharat Gupta is a distinguished scholar with a multifaceted expertise. He is not only a renowned classicist and a theater theorist, but also an accomplished sitar and surbahar player, as well as a respected musicologist. In recognition of his outstanding contributions to the field of musicology, he was honored with the prestigious Sangeet Natak Academy Award by the President of India in February 2023. I had come across his name and work in the context of my own research on Indo-Hellenic studies, and I was deeply impressed by the depth and originality of his scholarship. He is one of the very few Indian scholars who has deeply engaged with the study of Greek civilization, not merely repeating the interpretations of Western authors, but actually conducting original fieldwork, spending time in Greece, documenting ancient Greek theaters, and proposing an original thesis on the relationship between Greek and Indian theater. His work has been noticed by the Greek theater experts since 1996. Moreover, he is the only scholar to have conducted a comparative study of ancient Greek and Indian music so far. I came to finally meet him about a year ago through a fortunate connection through my husband Konstantinos. Upon learning of my academic interests, Professor Gupta graciously shared his book with me, encouraging me to consider translating it into Greek. After reading it carefully, I was immediately struck by his insightful approach and deep, rich analysis. Despite my very tight schedule, I decided to take on the challenging task of translating Bharat Gupt's book, as it became clear to me that this work held immense value for the academic world, particularly for the Indo-Hellenic intellectual field. My first thought was that this translation project would pull me away from my main research interest, which is music. But as I studied the book, I realized that in both the ancient Greek and Indian dramatic traditions, language, dance, music, and even costume formed a unified whole. In fact, it was this very characteristic, the balance of expressive mediums, that gave ancient Greek and ancient Indian theater their sacred, ritualistic nature, their hieropractic character, as Professor Gupt's describes it, and consequently, their power to have a real impact on people's souls. A power that in modern theater and modern art in general has unfortunately been lost. So I came to understand that this work would not only divert me from my research, but would actually enrich and complete it in ways I hadn't thought of. Professor Gupt's book, first published in 1994 and reprinted in 1996 and 2006, is based on his doctoral dissertation. It is divided into 3 parts and 12 chapters. In the first introductory chapter, he discusses the ritualistic or hieropractic nature of both Greek and Indian ancient drama, emphasizing the integration of speech, gesture, and dance. He also outlines the historical events that led to the departure from hieropraxis and the evolution of European drama. Additionally, he introduces the 2 central texts of his comparative study, Aristotle's Poetics and Bharata Muni's Natya Sastra. Then chapter 2 focuses on the dating of the Natya Sastra. Following this, the author explores shared beliefs of ancient Greeks and Indians depicted in Greek and Indian drama, such as the concept of miasma catharsis and soka soka, the gift of vitality, the ancestor worship and burial customs, the protection of the suppliant, and of course the power of oath. Chapter 4 examines the concept of drama as a festive tradition in both cultures. In part 2 of the book, the author reassesses the foundational concepts of Aristotle and Bharata Muni and then delves into the theory of imitation and the mediums of imitation. Chapter 8 compares the theatrical spaces in Greece and India. Chapter 9 is devoted to the visual aspects of drama, while Chapter 10 explores the oral content. Chapter 11 analyzes the dramatic genres and play structures in both tradition. And the book concludes with Part 3, which discusses the common themes of transformation and emotional arousal through hieropractic drama in Greece and India. The novelty of Bharat Gupt's work lies in the fact that he offers a fresh approach in the comparison of ancient Greek and Indian dramatic theories. Instead of treating the poetics and the Natya Sastra as Western and Eastern viewpoints, he points out the hieropractic character of both Greek and Indian drama and compares the similarities and differences between them, exploring the possibilities of common Indo-European origins, thus placing his study within the broad framework of ancient Indo-European culture and the art of the sacred drama. Professor Gupt realized that the notion of the West as against the East was actually a stereotype created by the Europeans in the context of colonialism. The idea that Greece represents a Western culture was actually spread in India by the British. However, as we all know, both India and Greece are much older than this division between West and East. Archaeological evidence reveals that Greeks and Indians, both renowned for their trade skills, traveled long distances along ancient trade routes as early as the Harappan period, long before the arrival of the British or the invasion of Alexander. Also, common Indo-European beliefs indicate that contacts between Greece and India are of pre-Homeric times. These interactions, primarily driven by trade, resulted in a healthy intellectual interchange between Greece and India. It is true that the foundation of European culture is often traced back to ancient Greek culture. However, Western culture was constructed not by embracing all aspects of ancient Greek culture, but by selectively adopting only few and certain elements that aligned with the dominant Christian European narrative and the prevailing, of course, aesthetic values of the time. Taking all this into deep consideration, Professor Gupt chose to think independently of Western scholarship, opting to look at Athens directly from Delhi, not via London or Paris, as he aptly puts it. He deliberately refrained from simply repeating the interpretations of Western authors who had studied ancient Greek drama. As a result, he discovered that ancient Greek theater was closer to ancient Indian theater as an ethical and religious act, or hieropraxis, within the context of the aesthetics of emotional arousal. He viewed Greek and Indian theaters not as separate, Western and Eastern, but as parts of the same Indo-European cultural heritage. Moreover, in his book, Professor Gupt goes beyond merely comparing the two dramatic traditions. He also invites us to reimagine the shared intellectual currents that may have flowed between these two great civilizations. As I already mentioned, there are sadly too few comparative studies on Greek and Indian culture, and Bharat Gupt's work is a bright exception. But in my view, this book is important not only because it sheds light on a neglected area of study, but also because it addresses a deeper need of our time. The relationship between Greek and Indian cultures is quite underexplored, and much of the discourse usually focuses on later historical periods, these that began with Alexander and continued through the Bactrian kings in India. Professor Gupt's work, however, takes us back to a much earlier period, beginning with Homeric Greece and comes up to the Athens of Pericles. This earlier period, with its profound cultural exchanges through the ancient and old commercial routes, has been largely overshadowed, and it is crucial to uncover these connections to enrich our understanding of the ancient world. Professor Gupt's work also has the potential to inspire both Greek and Indian modern theatre. Contemporary directors could explore the idea of integrating and equally collaborating the various means of communication in drama, that is, speech, music, and dance. They might also seek to revive or reinvent the hieropraxis of theatre, leading to innovative theatre productions and novel audience experiences. Moreover, Professor Gupt's work could lead to a reinstatement of the arts as a creative, therapeutic, and moral force within our educational systems, contributing to the adoption of a new educational model in which arts will be central subjects of study rather than mere extracurricular activities. In both ancient Greece and India, we all know that the arts played a major role in education. Music, for example, was one of the main subjects taught to students. Nowadays, though, in both educational systems, the arts have been relegated to an ornamental role. As a matter of fact, in Greek high school, the arts, and specifically the course of music and the course of painting, have been completely abolished. This has happened largely due to the influence of the Western post-Enlightenment education models. Our schools no longer promote art and creativity. In fact, they seem to fear it, prioritizing only the short-term, materially productive goals that their students are expected to achieve. As I mentioned earlier, translating this book into English holds immense value for the academic world, particularly for the Indo-Hellenic intellectual field. I was deeply shocked to learn that this work will be the only scholarly book by a modern Indian academic translated into Greek and published in Greece. The average drama student in Greece has no idea that such a book exists, which is really a pity. It was at the same moment that I also realized that Indian scholars wishing to study Greek culture must know Greek in order to access the majority of the relevant bibliography. If they do not, they will inevitably rely on English bibliography, written by foreign authors, which view Greek culture not through a Greek perspective, but from a Western European one, looking at Athens via London, as Professor Gupt beautifully put it. This realization underscores the need for greater cooperation between Greek and Indian academic communities. We need more translations, more books, more field studies, and student exchanges. We need a chair of Indian studies in Greece. We need to study both of our rich cultures, not through the lens of an exotic comparison between East and West, but through the lens of our centuries-old and far older than Alexander's time friendship. So, it can easily be noticed that this project is not just about translating a book, it's about creating a bridge for greater academic collaboration. It is essential that scholars in Greece and India work more closely together to further explore the rich and complex cultural exchanges that have shaped both of our civilizations. By doing so, we can correct misunderstandings, enrich our shared histories, and lay the foundation for a stronger relationship in the future. We should not fail to mention that such initiatives also strengthen the soft power of both countries. There is also another important dimension to the significance of translating this book into Greek. As you may know, most of the ancient Greek texts, including Aristotle's works, were lost over time, particularly during the 3rd century BC, when Christianity was imposed on the Greeks. It was a dark time, during which temples were destroyed, libraries were burned, the Olympic Games were halted, philosophical schools were closed, and those who wished to maintain the ancient religion were persecuted or murdered. The Poetics itself survives only as fragments, since the original work was lost, with only Aristotle's teaching notes having survived. This has led to a fragmented understanding of ancient Greek culture. Furthermore, the later influence of European powers who played a significant role in Greece's liberation from Ottoman rule has shaped the way we view our ancient heritage, often through an exoticized and westernized point of view. In our efforts to prove that we are the rightful descendants of the ancient Greeks, the founders of European culture who deserved the support of Europeans in our liberation struggle, we had to do so in a way that did not challenge the dominant Christian European narrative. We could admire the ancient Greeks for their language and their philosophy, but not for their religion or their ritualistic practices. Even drama was stripped of its ritualistic essence, ultimately becoming a mere shadow of its original form. Translating Professor Gupt'S work into Greek offers us an opportunity to reclaim and reassess our intellectual heritage. It allows us to redefine our identity by embracing the so-called Eastern aspect of our legacy, while fostering a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of Greek and Indian traditions. Looking ahead, I hope that this collaboration can be expanded in numerous exciting ways. We are already planning the publication of Professor Gupt'S work in Greek. Additionally, we envision the creation of a museum in Athens dedicated solely to Indian musical instruments, where we will not only showcase Konstantinos' rare and precious collection, but also foster deeper collaboration between Indian and Greek academics and artists. Furthermore, we are exploring the possibility of organizing exhibitions, concerts, and performances that celebrate arts from both traditions. We are also developing new comparative studies of our cultures. These efforts would not only highlight the beauty of our shared heritage, but will also bring fresh perspectives to the ongoing cultural exchange between Greece and India, inspiring creativity in both Indian and Greek artists. Coming to a conclusion, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Professor Bharat Gupt for his vision and scholarship, which have inspired this important work and fostered the spirit of cooperation between our two nations. I look forward to continuing this academic journey together, strengthening the bonds of friendship between Greece and India, and contributing to the ongoing dialogue that connects our past, present, and future. Thank you very much for your attention. Dhanyavad.
Then my question. It is often said, like for instance in the field of astronomy, that India only had a breakthrough thanks to the post-Alexandrine Greeks, a theory with which I strongly disagree. Now, in the field of theater, I am sure that the same idea exists, that only in like about 300 BC, Indians started doing that. Also about logic, for example, it is said that Buddhist logic owes everything to Aristotelian logic brought into India in about 300 BC. So could you enlighten us about that approach in the field of performing arts?
It seems the question is more to me, huh? And of course, to the translator. Well, you see, it's in answer to your question, I would almost be speaking out of my turn because I'm supposed to say a few things later. But specifically, yes, you are right. The idea that theater was born in Athens, Greece, largely in Athens around the theater of Dionysus. This was propagated from 19th century onward. And it was part of the colonial project to project, just as in India particularly, the British were projecting Shakespeare, as the great bard. Mm-hmm. And everybody who did the Indian civil service in England and later on our IAS, even 50 years ago, they would learn Shakespeare and spout it. Mm-hmm. So this whole thing is associated with theater also. And needless to say, that my brief has been to demolish that falsehood myth. I don't like using the word myth because myth for me is, in Greek terms, is a very honest, simple, sacred thing. It is like Purana. So myth is not false. It's later on that it acquired a connotation of falsehood. So this has been the main idea of my writing this book, or rather exploring. And I took almost about 20 years to, first of all, do the investigation as to what is the truth. Because I was taught, like a good young graduate in New Delhi in 60s, the usual lesson that theater comes to India from the West. Mm-hmm. And we had all these French and German scholars in the 19th century who were trying to prove that that Indian classics like Kalidas, etc., were all written under the influence of Menander, or not even the earlier Greek authors, the great Greek authors, playwrights, but later Roman authors. So I went into a very deep exploration and demonstrated that the real act of theater is something different. And the whole history of birth of theater, even in Greece, goes back to the Homeric times. Mm-hmm. It's not just in 600 BC, but it goes much earlier. And more than that, it reflects a whole different worldview. It reflects an approach to the cosmos, to divinity, to gods, and the relationship of human beings with the gods. And it is an entirely different world from the Renaissance world or the post-Christian world or even the Enlightenment world. And therefore, you have to see theater in the context of that. And there is nothing better than theater which can give you an idea of the Homeric world, or the world which could be, not just the pre-Socratic philosophers, but the very ancient times. And so if you would read the book, then you would find all those things demonstrated and quotations given from old texts and whatever research I did and all what the ancient authors were mentioning about theater, that it was an entirely different thing. And theater, as Greek theater is imagined, even today let us say, at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London or at New York University, more or less as a precursor of Renaissance drama. But in practice, it was not that. In practice, it was a great amalgam of the power of music, the power of poetry, the power of dance and costume, and your experience of sitting in that amphitheater and seeing the whole world outside, seeing the physical world, the great valley, the skies, so that you could imagine that whatever human beings do is at a very small scale. So it is a great lesson in humility. It is a great lesson in seeing the right place of man, woman, human beings, and not a place of arrogance. So it's an entirely different worldview, and the same worldview is reflected in the Vedic world. And Natya Shastra and the ancient Indian theatre inherits that cosmic worldview. Again, the power of the word, the power of music, the power of gesture, the power of feeling. So all those things are enumerated in this book, and I have not made any hypothetical flight. I have quoted the text. When I say this exists in Greece, then I quote a text. If I say it exists in India, then I quote a text. And the text is not just a dramaturgical text, it is something which was practiced. So either it is a play, or it is a comment of the people who watched theater at that time. There are many more things in this book. It's actually an investigation to the ancient world. And I still hold, as a classicist, if I may say so, that most of us have now abandoned the project of looking into the real ancient part of Greece or the real ancient part of India. See, and the problems are the same in Greece, and if you would allow me to say so, ma'am, as in India, that we think of the ancient world in very modern or medieval terms. We don't try to see them as they were at that time. So we have many modern theories which we impose and how we analyze, Of course, I'm not talking of the modern American academia which only sees the world in terms of gender rights and women's rights and social reform, and not just that very, very narrow prism. But even if you go into a broader perspective, we try to impose a whole concept of rationality onto the ancient Greeks, which was not part of their culture. There was a great philosopher and a scholar called E.V. Dodd. He wrote a book called Greeks the Irrational. The title of the book is Greeks the Irrational, because the Enlightenment world had been portraying the ancient Greeks as the most rational people. And even today, when you read some very recent thesis produced on ancient Greek drama in American universities, they are always trying to explore, did ancient Greek comedy in special or ancient Greek tragedy promote democracy? Of course, our idea of democracy. Not even the Greek idea of democracy.
And Perses, the Perses. This is the fight, the great fight between two cosmos, two worlds. The world of democracy and the other world of the opposite, that he wanted to conquer and saying by the dream that he wants to marry two women. This is what is the concept of marry two women, that he wants to marry Europe, what we call it Greece in these days, with the whole concept of a great idea of democracy, to take it to the West. And the concept also of religion. So if we speak about religion, we should see the whole Greek tragedy from Aeschylus, Sophocles, to Euripides, but there is difference between them, till we arrive to Seneca from the other side of Roman.
Yeah.
This is other thing. But what we want to show nowadays, it's not American school or French school or British school or Indian school, even if Egyptian school. How everyone that he can understand, and this is our role as academic, to understand the idea of the Greek theater. It is completely different, because this is a base of, if I understand the Greek culture by my concept, this is gives some benefits to Greek culture or the Greek theater. If you are like Indian, that you are trying to understand it by your Indian way, this is also good thing and benefit for the Greek theater. But we cannot say that the idea of the Greek theater is just only religious, because you see the relationship between gods and people is a clash, no?
Yes, I don't agree with you, but I don't disagree with you. But what I'm trying to say is that for too long we have concentrated on just the material aspect or the political aspect of it. There is a much greater element and a space for the relationship between the human and the divine.
Yes.
And the fundamental questions, particularly in tragedy, they are related to that. Undoubtedly, as you described, that it's a question of the kinds of democracy or the political power or hegemony or creating one kind of culture as you typified in terms of marrying two women or different things. But then there is a much deeper reality of the values of the ancient world, like the power of the word. I mean, why is it that media became so mad? Because her husband had said that he would not take to another woman, although in that society it was permitted. And when you give your word, this whole power of the word,
Logos.
orchos,
Yeah.
it's sacred. And when you break that, then the person goes mad, the woman goes mad. And she goes mad in the sense that it is a whole release of energy, not almost entirely destructive, that she kills her children. So that aspect of sacredness, that what happens when you break your word, or what happens when you deny refuge to a supplicant. Now, these are very, very different values. What I have tried to do in this book is to portray all those values which existed in the ancient world and which we really do not take into account. For instance, if somebody says that, okay, I am going to be your supplicant and you protect me now and you give your word, then you have to die to defend that person. This is not a modern value. It's not even a medieval value. It's a very special ancient Greek value and an ancient Hindu value. And I have quoted the text. I have quoted the text in Sanskrit, and I have given you the quotations and the accounts in the Greek side. So I wrote this book primarily to give an account of that whole chunk of life and world which we tend to overlook, undoubtedly, as you say. And I'm very glad that Professor Musa, who is a classicist, has joined the discussion today. It makes this discussion so very rich. The advantage of an Indian looking at Greek theater, of an Egyptian looking as you are an Egyptian, or an American is there. But there is the great reality of what this ancient culture in itself was. I think I have taken too much time.
I have a question for you. Beyond the academic and intellectual circles in Greece, how much interest would be there amongst the larger public for Indian dance, ancient Indian dance and drama?
I think there is interest in Greek intellectual fields, and it is a field that has not been studied enough, and people are curious about it, but they know nothing, almost nothing about it. So it's because it is underexplored. So I think that it would be very good if we cooperated more and did more research on that.
Because of this discussion, some ideas have come up, so I am sharing with you now about the book. Satya has described that, Professor Bharat Gupta himself has said, no doubt, why this book is relevant today, and it was written 20, 30 years back and is still relevant. And if we try to find out books on comparative cultures, Greece and India, we find in the theater, we find this as a primary important book and most important secondary source for research in this part of the world, or in South Asia or India. See, theater was important in ancient Greek. We were talking about it, and about the ideas, about the values, how both Greece and India, they find certain values together, exchange of ideas between Greece and India. All these there is a process behind it, a historical process. And as we know that this knowledge was much discussed amongst philosophers of Greece and India at a place, perhaps in the court of the Persian emperors, Xerxes, Darius, etc. And we know that most of the philosophical knowledge or ideas were being discussed. Ionian philosophers, they were coming to the emperor's court, and because the northwest part of then Indian subcontinent was part of the Persian Empire, which was the 20th estate as per the classical Greek authors. Tatius, especially Tatius, Herodotus, all have written about this part, 20th estate, and a lot of gold and money as a revenue was going there in that part, and lot of ideas were also going. Even the Persian medical doctor, Xerxes' doctor, was an Indian. So this knowledge was going there. So lot of exchange took place there, and there was certain idea of India in the Greek world, and for sure, 12th, 13th century onwards, the school of classics, especially at the center of Oxford and Cambridge, their schools come up of classical studies, and by the 16th, 17th century, the Greek idea or the Greek world was known to the today's Western world, which Western world is. And the scholarships in 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, they made those idea of India strong in the Western scholarship. And when the East India Company officers came, who were military officers basically, because reading Greek and Latin was most important for the civil servants. I think this was almost 2/3 part of their curriculum in the civil services examination, Indian civil service examination. So they were having a certain idea of this part of the world, India, through the classical knowledge which was available to the Western world after the Renaissance. And so they were having a stereotype about India, and all this was, produced in the ancient texts. Golden availability of gold, exotic animals, important medicines, all these ideas about India. And British officers were having this idea of India through these texts, Greek texts, and they were trying to find out the places, everything. When in that way, India was discovered, and books, as as Jawaharlal Nehru ji wrote, Discovery of India, all that. So a country which was 3,000, 4,000 years old was being discovered, in the same way as America was discovered, or Vasco da Gama discovered India, all those things. So in that sense, this book complete our, clear our thinking or viewpoint about the connections of the two worlds. And theater also was, important as a social institution in the ancient time. It was not just a entertainment place or expression of arts, etc., but it was a social institution. And we see that the emergence of democracy and polis, in the policies, ancient policies, the democracy was emerging around 600 BC. And we have to see that how world was coming up. If we see if we compare the chronological development or historical processes, we will find that there are certain same type of historical processes were taking place in these two parts. Coming up of police system and the development of Mahajanpadas in India. A lot of research papers have been written that how both places were coming up, but same type of institutions and ideas at the same time. New ideas were coming up, a new revolution was taking place in the form of Buddhistic thought process, and same things were happening there. And with coming of Alexander and establishing of 78 Alexandrias, although we have not found those 78 Alexandrias, we know that wherever an excavation takes place, if a theater is found, it means a Greek city was there. So theater has also worked as a, I don't know whether I can say it or not, because there may be objections on this, but it was like putting a flag somewhere to show that we have captured this land. So if a theater is there, Ai-Khanum, as it was excavated and we found theater, and we see that it means that this was the Greek world. So theater was social institution. Theater was, as Sir he explained, that it was how Greeks were seeing the cosmos. One very important comparison has been done by Professor U.P. Arora, my teacher and Professor Gupt'S colleague. He has done a comparison between theater culture and Kumbh culture of India. Theater, as we enjoy life, we see our life full of festivities, and life is a festival in continuation. In the same way, theater was the continuation of life, enjoying life, discussing every aspect of the life. So as a social institution, that was important. Religious social, the same way as Kumbh is religious social. And theater was very important part of Olympics, etc. They all together came up wherever there is a center of. We go Delphi. Delphi was a ritualistic temple site, and we see theater over there. So these are the aspects which come up, and this book actually should be part of the curriculum of every university where we study classics and modern fine arts, also the visual arts and schools of music and dance and theater. This book shall be part of, because it gives us important knowledge about all the aspects into to part of the world which were having the same view of life. That's why this term Oriental Continuum is important nowadays. We don't consider, although this will never be accepted by the Europe, but my school consider Greece part of the East Eastern world, we don't say Greece as West. We say it as Oriental continuum. So this debate will go on, and the book has the potential to give clear sight to clear ideas in this whole discussion. We are grateful to Professor Bharat Gupta for his scholarship and to give us this great treasure to enjoy and enrich our scholarships, our efforts to learn about the ancient past. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Gupt's dedication isn't just academic, it's personal, and it's helped bridge two cultures in ways that are both profound and lasting. I have no doubt there are many more avenues to explore thanks to his tireless work. This endeavor of translating Professor Gupt's book, led by the accomplished Miss Satya Kasimi, embodies the spirit of academic exchange and cross-cultural dialogue between Greece and India. It's an example of how the timeless wisdom of both civilizations can be preserved and made accessible to broader audiences. The work of Ms. Kasimi will bring a new dimension to the appreciation of ancient Greek and Indian dramatic traditions. I would like to express my heartfelt congratulations to Ms. Kasimi for undertaking this task of translating such an important work, connecting the rich traditions of Greece and India, and I'm confident that her translation will inspire a greater appreciation for the literary and dramatic heritage of both countries. Thank you very much.
I was very keen that this book gets translated into Greek so that it can be really evaluated by the Greek people. A friend promised it earlier, tried, but then, we have to yield to the will of some higher powers. It didn't happen. Now, she has undertaken the task, and I think she has finished more than half the book. So hopefully next year it would be published, and then within a few months or a year, I would get an assessment from the Greek people, because that is what would matter most to me, because I think they would be the final judge. Of course, many people have read it in English in Greece also in the last so many years, since '94. It's being sold, it was sold till very recently. But, when it goes to the practitioner of theater, and it is read by, let us say, a very mid-career director or an actor, then it's something different. Because eventually we are talking about an art. We are not talking about theories and history and various other things. We are talking about the practice of an art form. So it is really the practitioner who would be able to give the verdict. I'm thankful to you for doing the translation, and I'm waiting for the ultimate result. Thank you.
It's extremely difficult for me to chair a session where the discussion is on a book, author of the book is sitting, and I know that the true translators of this book is sitting in this hall. So it is extremely difficult.
Yeah. Please mention that he is translating it into Hindi.
Yeah. So I'll just introduce Dr. Yogesh Sharma, who is translating the same book into Hindi. This book, Dramatic Concepts, Greek and Indian, a study of the poetics and the Natya Shastra by Professor Bharat Gupta, is thought-provoking work which discusses ancient Greek and Indian dramatic theories, focusing on Aristotle's Poetics and Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. Instead of treating the Poetics and the Natya Shastra as the Western and Eastern viewpoints, it has proposed a broader framework of shared ancient Indo-European culture and the sacred art of drama. The book's central argument that Greek and Indian theatre shares a common origin in Heros praxis is a compelling and original perspective of the author. It has key concepts like anukaran, dharmi, abhinay, itivrit, mimesis, muthos, melopoa, catharsis, and rasa, etc., from the Aristotle's Poetics and Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, highlighting their similarities and differences and unique characteristics. As already discussed and explained, that the book has 3 separate sections discussing on ancient drama as hieropraxis, concepts and techniques, and transformation and emotional arousal. I'll not go into the details of these, as it has already been explained to all of you. The concept of rasa and the views of the Acharya Lollat, Sonak, Bhattanayak, and Acharya Abhinav Gupta have been vividly discussed in this book. Most of you may be aware that the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts works and presents its research in its totality, integrating all the different forms of arts together. On the similar concept, if I see in this book, it's all integrated, and the holistic approach has been taken to present the context and not in isolation. I'll give an example of IGNC's project on multimedia of Jayadev's Geet Govind, that is the 12th century epic poem, where in the multimedia, the purpose was to familiarize the audiences on the fundamental concepts of Indian music, dance, and arts, and their interrelationship, to present it in its holistic format. The content was conceived by the well-respected scholar and our mentor, Dr. Vatsyayan, who meticulously worked on Geet Govind for over 60 years. I would like to heartily congratulate Professor Gupta and Ms. Satya Kasimi and Dr. Yogesh Sharma for his thought-provoking work. This book is a significant contribution to the field of theater studies, and the Indian knowledge system. Dr. Gupt's innovative approach and insightful analysis make it a compelling read for the researchers, scholars interested in the history and major theories of Indian and Greek drama, both ancient and contemporary. I would like to end with the quote from the Natya Shastra, "Notajat jnanam, natat silpam, no sa vidya, no sa kala, na so yogo na tatkarma, natyasmin nidrishyate," meaning there is no knowledge, no craft, no science, no art, no yoga, and no action that is not present in the Natya. Thank you.
Respected Professor Bharat Gupta, Her Excellency Ms. Aliki Kuchomito-Pulu, Ambassador of Greece, Professor Pratapanand Jha, Ms. Satya Kasimi, ladies and gentlemen. With the permission of the chair and you, sir, I would like to place a couple of things here. Wilt thou the blossoms of spring and the fruits that are later in season? Wilt thou have charms and delights? Wilt thou have strength and support? Wilt thou with one short word encompass the earth and the heaven? All I said, if I name only thee, O Shakuntala. I think we all are aware of this. John Wolfgang Goethe in 1791, in an epigram expressing his fascination for the great literary Sanskrit work, Shakuntala. Interestingly, Sir William Jones produced this translation titled as Sakuntala or The Fatal Ring in 1789 and sent across a copy to Goethe. And within next 100 years, we see that there were at least 46 translations in 12 European languages of that text, Shakuntala. Another example I would like to quote here is of Edward Fitzgerald, an English poet and writer, whose famous poem is the first and best known English translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which has kept its reputation and popularity since 1860s. The third may be Bourgeois' translation of Panchatantra of Vishnu Sharma in the Middle Persian or Pahlavi in 550 AD, which became a basis for a Syriac translation as Kalilag and Damanag, and a translation into Arabic in 750 CE by Persian scholar Abdullah ibn al-Mukafa as Kalila wa Damina, which sparked off a series of translations of the work in the Near Eastern, European, and Southeast Asian languages. And the Panchatantra is revered as one of the most notable works, translated works of all times. As we all know, the word translation comes from the Latin translatio, translates to across, while ferre is to carry or to bring. Latio derives from latus, the past participle of ferre. Translatio is a carrying or bringing across a text from one language to another. So, translation as a process brings the users of a linguistic group closer to the source group, both academically as well as culturally. This adds a new leaf to the development of history of ideas and how they blossom in a distant linguistic atmosphere. The book in discussion today has been penned by Professor Bharat Gupta, a distinguished scholar and a well-known and perhaps the only subject expert who could have written such a profound work as the dramatic concepts, Greek and Indian. He has been involved in bringing these two magnificent civilizations together through his various academic efforts, and we are truly grateful to you, sir, for not only having written this seminal text, but also for your kind presence today and making this evening possible. Thank you, sir. We are privileged with the gracious presence of Her Excellency, Ms. Aliki Kuchomitopulu, Ambassador of Greece, who very generously gave her consent to be the guest of honor for this session, despite her busy schedule. Thank you, Her Excellency, for your presence and kind words. We have listened to Ms. Satya Kasimi, and who has taken up this arduous task of translating the book into Greek, and thus has owned up to be the cultural emissary between the two countries. We have been delighted to have listened to her as she talked about her journey with the book, and we are grateful to you, Ms. Satya, for being with us today and for illuminating us about your endeavor. We look forward to the completion of the work soon, and we wish you all the best. We also thank Professor Anil Kumar, the Greek chair at JNU, for his presence and kind remarks. Thank you, sir. Professor Pratapanand Jha gave his consent to chair this wonderful session, and we are truly beholden to you, sir, for the same. Your summation of the book and the session ably reflects the clarity of thought that you have invested in decoding the text, and that you have been generous enough to share this with all of us. Thank you, sir. I thank my colleague, Dr. Yogesh Sharma, for curating this entire program flawlessly. As has been put on record, he has been approached by the National School of Drama, Delhi, to translate this work into Hindi, which he has graciously consented to, and we hope that the book will be out soon. So I thought the importance of translation itself should also be brought. So hence the exegesis. I also take this opportunity to place on record our sincere gratitude to President IGNC Trust Sri Ram Bahadur Rai and Member Secretary of IGNC Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, both of whom would have loved to join this important session, but for their earlier commitments. Thanks are due to the teams of Kalakosh and other divisions of IGNCA for making this possible. Thank you, everyone.